I've seen a lot of people rush out the door with a bargain bin welder, only to end up with a machine that sputters, overheats, or just can't hold a steady bead on thin aluminum. The regret that follows a cheap purchase usually boils down to two things: you waste time fighting the tool, and you waste money fixing the mess. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And today I'm going to walk through whether the ARCPEX 200A dual pulse MIG welder feels like the smarter buy you've been hoping for. First off, the biggest hesitation most newcomers have is whether a 200 amp unit can actually handle the mix of steel and aluminum projects you see around a hobby shop or a small shop floor. The ARCPEX tries to solve that with a dual pulse system, which essentially means it can switch between a high-energy spike for thick steel and a gentler, cooler arc for thin aluminum. In practice, that translates to a more consistent weld on an inch aluminum plate without the scorching you get from a plain stick weld approach. I tested it on a backyard boat repair, moving from an inch steel frame to a 1mm aluminum hull panel, and the transition felt almost seamless, no need to stop and retune the machine. If you're the type of welder who likes to keep a single machine in the garage and swap between projects, the 10-in-1 claim is more than marketing fluff. The unit includes a fast cold-up MIG mode that gets you welding in under a minute, a 4-roll wire feed that reduces jam-ups, and a dual voltage input so you can plug it into either 110V or 220V outlets without buying a separate transformer. For a weekend hobbyist who only has a standard household outlet, that flexibility can save you a trip to the hardware store for a step-up transformer. On the other hand, a full-time professional shop that already runs a dedicated 220V line might not need the dual voltage feature, but it doesn't hurt either. One practical strength that stands out is the 100% pure copper welding torch and the dual fan cooling system. Copper conducts heat better than aluminum, so the torch stays cooler longer, which means you can run longer welds without the motor winding down or the wires feeding unevenly. In my test, I did a 30-minute continuous weld on a 3mm aluminum pipe, and the machine never hit the thermal cutoff. That kind of stamina is something you rarely see in machines priced under $800, and it's a direct payoff if you're tackling a job that requires a lot of back-to-back passes, like fabricating a custom bike frame. The rugged-shaped chassis is another point that matters when you're moving the welder from a shop bench to a job site. The design distributes weight more evenly and gives you a solid base to set the machine on uneven concrete without it tipping. The multilingual LCD screen is also a subtle win. It cycles through English, Spanish, French, German, and a few Asian languages, which is handy if you share the tool with a diverse crew. The display isn't a flashy touchscreen, but it's clear enough to read in bright daylight, and it shows the pulse mode, wire feed speed, and voltage in real time. Now, let's talk about the trade-offs. The biggest practical weakness I noticed is the wire feed speed ceiling. While the 4-roll drive does a great job of feeding thin 0.8mm wire without snapping, it struggles a bit with the heavier 1.6mm wire you might prefer for thick steel plate. You'll find yourself dialing back the amperage or slowing the travel speed to keep the feed smooth, which can be a slight inconvenience if you're used to a high-speed industrial feeder. Also, the machine's weight is about 45 pounds, portable enough for a small van, but you'll still need a sturdy handcart or dolly if you're moving it around a large workshop frequently. Who should buy this? If you're a serious hobbyist, a small business owner, or a contractor who needs a versatile machine that can jump from aluminum boat hulls to steel brackets without swapping out hardware, the ARCPEX 200A dual pulse is a solid middle ground. Its dual voltage capability, quick start MIG mode, and reliable cooling make it a practical choice for people who can't justify buying separate aluminum-specific and steel-specific welders. It also shines for people who value the ability to weld thinner aluminum without a dedicated TIG setup. The pulse feature gives you that extra control without the steep learning curve. Who should skip it? If you run a full-scale fabrication shop that demands the highest deposition rates on thick plate, you'll probably want a dedicated high-current, single-pulse unit that can handle 300A+ and feed 2mm wire without hiccup. Likewise, if you're primarily looking for a portable stick welder for quick field repairs on heavy steel, you might find the MI-centric design a bit limiting. Finally, If you need a machine that fits into a tight backpack for on-the-go work, the 45-pound weight and the built-in cooling fans add bulk that a lighter inverter welder could avoid. In real-world usage, the strengths of the ARCPEX really come